Before we hit record, I was asking you a question and you said pause and hit record. So let's start with, how do you make sense of what's going on in the world, or do you?
I'm not terribly surprised. I'm not talking about predictions or anything. It's just one. The thing that is most talked about is the thing on everyone's mind. And if it isn't talked about, then it isn't on everyone's mind, but doesn't mean the turmoil is not there. So just look at the overall state of affairs. Forget the coronavirus. There's nothing but coronavirus. If you look back 50 years, if you look back 80 years, 100 years, everyone isn't dying of cancer. Everyone doesn't have type 2 diabetes. Everyone isn't being struck from anxiety and pills and psychiatrists on every corner, and the whole thing has gone. It's all downhill. So coronavirus is just another detail of the degradation of society. The spread and how that degradation reveals itself is just details. And this is just a significant detail. I think the big problem, once again, I told you, don't come to me if you want to feel better, because those things don't do anything. So, if someone gives you a few kind words and it relaxes you for 5 minutes, and in the 6th minute, you're back to where you are. So let's just stop the nonsense and be serious. If you're going to be serious, be serious. If you're not going to be serious, then just turn on CNN and go back to that. It really is not about how can you say some good words to make us feel better. I mean, haven't you had enough of that? It really is about talking seriously about what's going on. Your life's in chaos. Life's always in chaos. If you didn't have coronavirus, is your life at peace? You're just look at the world. The world. Coronavirus is just a holding up the mirror even closer. That's all it is. Just what it is.
And do you look at it as, and I really do appreciate the fact that you say that, hey, your life is in chaos with or without the damn coronavirus, and this is a mirror.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly right. It really is. It isn't about understanding that message, because there is no message. There's no message that you should make sure that you take a look at your life and see that it's in chaos. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do anything. If something seeps into your bones, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There's no message here. There's no make sure that you go and do this. There's no go say your prayers. There's nothing. There's nothing. Any message is a farce. It's an attempt to sell someone on an idea.
Has this disrupted your life personally in any ways?
I would say no, but it doesn't matter. Because there's far more fundamental problems to focus upon in our lives. You see, human beings are media chasers. They're alarmists. They enjoy the alarm. They enjoy the drama. They enjoy 24/7 news. They enjoy it. They actually enjoy it. Okay? And I'm not saying that's bad or that's good. I'm saying that's just the nature of the human mind.
It's the truth. Yeah.
The human mind looks for distraction. And I'm not saying that a virus is all distraction, that you shouldn't take precautions and that you shouldn't do what's necessary to prevent yourself from getting infected or doing it to someone else. I'm not saying that. That's practical. That's practical. But what bothers the human being isn't practicality. What bothers is the emotional drama and the fear and the anxiety. That's the bothersomeness, right? It's not, I have to stay away from so-and-so. Well, from that respect, social distancing is all I've been talking about for the last 7 years.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. In fact, that's how we started our conversation last time. Yeah.
So, I think you should be alone anyways. Socialization is a plague to begin with. So what are you going to talk about in your socialization sessions anyways, right? You're going to gossip about this and you're going to laugh about that and hee hee ha ha and nonsense and waste your life away. So who cares? I mean, so it isn't about minimizing coronavirus. It isn't about maximizing it. It's about you. And are you serious? And do you really want to have a serious conversation? Or do you want to be hysterical? And do you want to, your life, everyone who's worried about the coronavirus, their life is in complete shambles as it is. What's the difference? If your house is collapsed, what's the difference that now on top of the collapse, a few twigs fell as well? Might as well. Might as well be an avalanche on top of it. What's the difference? It isn't like your house was perfect or in any semblance of perfect to begin with, right? So the major issues of our lives are avoided by design because the human mind enjoys distraction. And the greatest problem is the only problem. And the only problem is your mind. Anxiety, fear, stress, concern, worry, anger. All of these things, even if there wasn't a virus for the next 10,000 years, even if every person in the world made $3 million a year, Mo, and everyone had a Ferrari, and everyone had all the food they want to eat, fine. No world hunger. Can we take care of that? Fine. No world hunger, no world thirst. Let's get all the kumbayas out. Let's take care of it all. Fine. But what's that going to change? At the end of the day, you're still going to go home with your mind. And that is the frontier that no one is looking at.
That's what I appreciate so much about you, man, is to get to that level of understanding. So do you see that one needs to be in the state of desperation to reach that level of seriousness that you talked about? And a few will probably emerge from there. But are we at that state that maybe this public desperation, a few people will emerge and head in that seriousness direction that you talk about?
It's a good question. I think that life-threatening events and very serious things in one's life oftentimes do have that impact on some people. It doesn't happen en masse. No, absolutely not. That's never going to happen. I mean, the second coming could happen every single day for next week, and that wouldn't happen. It's not going to happen. So, but there are those who are always sort of on the verge of that, on the cusp of that, and they're actually ripe for becoming serious, and maybe it's something like this that makes them so. But it's a good question. Does someone have to be desperate to reach there? I mean, there has to be some level of extremeness of some sort, whether it's extreme desperation, whether it's extreme desire, whether it's extreme dissatisfaction with the status quo. There has to be some form of an extreme. No one 5 steps their way into this. Okay, this is not going to be at your workshop, and this is not going to be at your mastermind meeting. This is not going to be at your school luncheon. There has to be an avalanche of some. There has to be a hammer across your head of some sort for one to be shaken out of this reverie, out of this zombified state. That's not going to come from any podcast which says, examine your own life, make sure that all podcasts are just crap. I'm sorry, no. Everything is just nonsense.
You don't have to apologize to me.
Yeah, all these DVDs, YouTube channel, everything is just nonsense because the very foundation is a non-starter. And the reason for that is, let's speak truth, Mo. Might be the only place in the world where truth is being spoken, right? In this conversation between me and you. Where anything is a non-starter if it begins with the idea to send someone a message or to help them. Because people don't want to be helped. And that isn't a good thing or a bad thing. Nobody actually wants to be told what to do. And quite frankly, even if they did, and you tell them what to do, they're only appreciative that they were told, and then 5 minutes later, they go back to who they are. So in India, you have this long-standing ritual of, gurus giving these talks to, literally millions of people in the audience, right? I mean, very, very large, unimaginable audiences. And everyone in their audience is sitting cross-legged and shaking, nodding their head and yes. And then, and then what do? Everyone goes back home and goes back to their life. And then what always is the criticism that you hear? Oh, you listen, but you don't act upon it.
Right.
That's just nonsense. No, first of all, you have to understand, you cannot condemn people. You have to understand the human psyche. Why is that person there? They're not there to act upon it. They're not wrong or right. They're not good or bad. They're there because it gives them some semblance of peace to go sit in that lecture hall for whatever it is. It gives them a respite from their mundane and trauma-filled life. It's an escape, okay? And that isn't wrong or right. And so no one's acting upon it because nobody wants to. What you need is a whole bunch of rifles, right? You need a whole bunch of rifles and aimed at people's heads. And with the threat of death, they might tell the truth. And the only way they'll tell the truth is first if they're forced to be in a position where they're actually looking to examine what the truth is. They don't even know why they go. So everyone's a zombie of some type.
Yeah, I agree. So let me ask you something. I want to get to the truth in a minute, but you just triggered something. You wrote something that I know you don't remember about this whole idea of turmoil. Turmoil arrives on its own accord and it must leave by its own accord. In what way is that accomplished?
There's no way that I can answer that question. There's no way that I can say, let me tell you, it's about being thrown into the water and then coming out and becoming wet. And then me asking you, what do you feel right now? And then you saying, I'm wet. And I ask you, what does wet mean? You have no way to describe that. So what am I going to say? Do these things and you'll be out of turmoil? No. My discourses, my Siddha scrolls, those things are an ongoing exposure to a human being, which slowly seeps into the bones without any effort from themselves and without a shadow of a prescription. So this is not a 5-step plan. So can you tell me how to get out of turmoil? That's nonsense. No, I will tell you this: turmoil will leave on its own if there is the appropriate immersion, if there is the appropriate and systematic and ongoing and consistent exposure to truth. It will leave on its own.
So do you think that the few people who are serious about the truth, are we trying too hard to understand the notion of the truth? Is that why it's elusive to the majority of us?
No, I don't think there's a reason. I would say my first answer would be nobody really is interested in the truth. And it's not a good thing or a bad thing. I keep coming back to that. It is not a good thing or a bad thing. It is virtually impossible to talk to people, and it isn't the people's fault. It's society's fault. It's because they have become conditioned to hear what you didn't say. And it's not their fault because in all cases, they're right. So for instance, if I say what I just said, if I say they don't want to hear the truth, they don't hear that. What they hear is they don't want to hear the truth and they should, okay? And they're not wrong to hear that because that's the only message being propagated. Their whole entire life, they are surrounded by loudspeakers in every direction, even from the underside. Everything is in that vein. You should be doing this. And anything that's negative, anything that's in the negative, which says, well, because you don't do this, the implication absolutely 100,000% is that they're saying that you should do this. And I'm not. I'm saying things at face value. But human beings are not able to see things at face value because they've been conditioned to be prescribed to. And that's the only microphone through which they hear.
Agreed, 1,000%. So when you think about the emotional impact, obviously, that it's having on people is real. I want to ask you something about the economic impact. The economic impact, especially the stock market impact, has really wrecked people, and it's wrecked people emotionally. How do you see that? If that were to happen to you, how do you rationalize that?
Why do you want to rationalize?
What do you do to think about it?
Listen, what are you asking?
I'm asking that if you have experienced in 3 or 4 days losses that took you 7 years to accumulate. How do you feel about that?
What are you asking?
That's what I'm asking.
What if I say I feel X? Okay, so
what do you do about it? What do you do about it?
Why are you asking? What are you going to do about it? I want you to know what you're asking. You don't know what you're asking.
Because I'm curious. I'm really curious. There are people who deal with it. And
where are you trying to go? I'll help you. I'll help.
Help me. Go ahead.
Or you're trying to feel good.
No, I'm really not. I'm really not.
Because it is turmoil to lose
millions of dollars. Yes.
Turmoil. And so the question that you're asking, in all these euphemistic beat around the bush ways, is that does not feel good. I'm in turmoil, and I want that anxiety and that feeling of turmoil to go away. So give me a way to process it so that I can make sense of it, so that I can temporarily escape that turmoil.
That's a beautiful question. That's a beautiful question. That's a beautiful question. Yes.
Okay. And I'm telling you that I don't think that you're ready for the answer. Because the answer that I'm going to give you is it doesn't matter. Because before this coronavirus came along and before 50% of your net worth was wiped out, you had turmoil in other ways.
I agree. This is just 100%.
One thing for the other. So your life was not perfect. And that's an understatement. Your life was not anything close to perfect.
Sure.
Are you telling me? Now, I will go along just for kicks with the guy who says, no. You don't understand. Every single morning I wake up totally free. I'm at peace 24/7. There isn't a single ounce of self-conflict within me. And then the coronavirus came along, and then my net worth went down, and now I'm in turmoil. And I want to get back to that perfection that I had, or semblance of perfection that I had 2 years ago. Fine, I'll take that. I'll go with that guy and answer his question. Okay? Now, there isn't a single human being like that.
I agree.
Okay? So then that isn't the real question, right? It isn't about the answer, it's about the question. The question is not, what do I do about this latest turmoil? The question is, what about all the turmoils in your entire life that you haven't even examined what the fundament of those things are? And that you're chasing turmoil after turmoil after turmoil, trying to feel better, and you've been doing that your entire life. How long have you been alive? How long have you been alive? And your entire life, you've been trying to feel better about one turmoil after another. So even if I gave you a magic pill and you felt better, next Monday, you have a brand new set of turmoils. What are you talking about? So this is not serious. And I have no interest in making anyone feel better and playing their stupid game.
Yeah, and this makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. However, the relationship that people have with money supersedes a lot of things, including the relationship they have with themselves. In fact, money is their identity. What do you say to those people?
What are you asking when you ask me, what do I say to them?
I'm curious. I'm curious if one of them, if you're working with one of them.
Well, it isn't about me saying something to them. I answer the question. What do they want to know, right? So once again, you see, Mo, and I'm not picking on you, Mo, but listen.
I love it. Keep going.
No, you know what's going on here? Do you see? You are providing a wonderful display and examination of just how conditioned human beings have become, because the foundational question is so given that it isn't even mentioned. The foundational question is setting someone straight. How do you make them not feel that way? How do you correct and fix their view? How do you make them feel better? You didn't even ask that, but you don't have to. You ask the next level up, assuming that because that's a given, right? So when you asked me, what would you tell the guy who's basically attached to money? That's what you're asking. Okay, you wanted me to fix the guy, to make him unattached to money, right? And the reason that you believe that is because you believe in shoulds and prescriptions. You believe that he shouldn't be attached to money, and that's because you believe in good and bad. Do you see the layers?
Clearly, I see it clearly.
Foundation of layers. I would say, if someone's attached to money, what's the problem? If someone's a heathen, what's the problem? Now, if the person says to me, I have a massive problem, this is eating me alive, I genuinely want a way out. Different conversation. Different conversation. But we live in a society where the motivational speaker and the priest and the mindfulness expert
it's a quicker fix.
Right. What they're doing is they throw confetti on people, right? Oh, you're sad. Here's a good way to not be sad anymore. Let me give you a hack, right?
Sure.
And that person needs to get in the face with a sledgehammer because he is the one spreading the coronavirus. The coronavirus is not about coronavirus. There's a far bigger coronavirus, and that's called prescription. That's Ebola times 1,000. Coronavirus is small.
Well, I mean, obviously, that type of person has to have a willingness to let go of what he or she believes, right? You know, until you're ready to do that, it's hard to take that next level of seriousness that you talk about.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's a willingness. I mean, even that's force. I would say it's an outright desire to do so. And even this is really instructive, because willingness, where'd that come from? You came up with the word willingness. It's a very revealing word. You came up with the word willingness because it reveals that someone doesn't really want to change, and they better want to change if they want to get better. That's once again forcing someone out of where they want to be based upon the idea that they should, based upon the idea of good and bad, right and wrong, correct and incorrect. That's where willingness comes from. Did you ever say they better be willing to eat chocolate ice cream?
No, I haven't.
Because there's no good or bad. Let the heathen be a heathen. Leave him alone. There is no changing anyone. There is no prescribing to anyone. That is the rule of society. That is the chaos of society. That's that domain. The fact of the matter is, whatever one or two things I might have said that might have tickled one or two people, at the end of the day, Mo, let's be honest, right? I got a handful of years to live. Who knows? Maybe I got a day to live. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But most of my insights are going to die with me, and my insights, in truth, are not even my own. They just came. They came from because their desire to learn the truth is astronomical. But even that came. So none of it is self-created. Like I didn't create any of that. But the number of people who really want this level, it's extraordinarily small. And that isn't a bad thing or a good thing. It's just the state of affairs. So honesty is saying the way things are, not the way that they should be.
Right. So I'm trying to discover ways to get out of my own way, right? Trying to discover ways so, I can identify those immersive things that I need to identify to get out of my own mind.
Why you don't get your own way? I'll tell you why.
What? Tell me.
You don't want to. And no, I did not say that you should. You just don't want to.
But I do.
No, you don't.
But I do.
Okay.
Pretend that I do.
Okay. Listen, stop. If I put a camera on you, right, and I watched you, and I watched the video footage every night, okay, would I see a person who all day is immersed in trying to get out of his own way?
Probably not. No.
So that means you don't want it. So you're wrong. And I must hammer home that I did not imply in the least that you should.
I agree.
Clouds are white, the sky is blue. Clouds shouldn't be black and the sky shouldn't be red. The sky is blue, clouds are white. Mo does not want to get out of his own way. And Mo is not a bad person for doing so. Mo is not unself-development motivated for being that's just where you are. You don't want to get out of your own way. There's a very, very, very huge, massive, fundamental tidal wave of difference, Mo, between want and would be nice if. Okay?
Sure, I get it.
So the guy who really wants to, let's say, start a company and become a billionaire, and he goes and devotes his life to it and does it, he's not even in the same zip code as the guy who says, boy, it sure would be nice if I got $1 billion.
Yeah. I agree.
So all things begin and end with maniacal desire. And the thing that you want in your life are precisely the things that you already have. And you know how I know that? Because you have them.
All right, so I'm trying to process that. However, assume for a moment with me that I have a job, right? I have a job and I work 10 hours a day and so forth and so on. And I really do have a deep level of commitment to try to get to this truth that we talk about, right? It may not be 24/7, but it may be, something that I have a deep level of awareness of. Why would you look at that as something that, hey, I'm not ready for that? What would cause you to think that despite the fact that I'm not committed 24/7 to it, I'm not ready to reveal that person that that the truth reveals?
Because there is something that everyone is ready for. And that something is what they do 24/7.
And is it doable when you actually have to get up and go to work every day for 10 hours a day? Would you consider that part of the 24/7, or do you have to abandon that?
Nothing is doable. Nothing is doable. It is only the things that you have no choice but to do are doable. Everything else is not doable. There is something in your life that you do 24 hours a day without counting the hours. There are things in your life that you do without even thinking. Every single day, every single night.
Mm-hmm.
You never say, is it doable to do that? You only say, is it doable to do things that you don't really want to do. If I put a bunch of money in an undisclosed location, and you have a meeting at 5 o'clock, and I tell you, I left you a whole bunch of money, but it's only available at 5 o'clock. Are you going to, and you're hungry for money. You're starving and you need money. Are you going to say, is it doable to get there at 5 o'clock?
Of course not.
Okay, so that's my point. You only ask the doable and is it okay if I practice 12 hours, not 12? It's all nonsense. It's all lies. Everyone is a liar. And that isn't bad. That's what they are. Everyone's a liar.
So when you think about, so basically we're all telling ourselves stories, right? And those stories are validating that we need to stay in kind of on the path that we're on right now, as opposed to be completely abandon that, let go of that shit and head towards the truth. Is it that desperation then that we don't have?
Well, only if the desire for that is there. There's no like, I'm on this path and I need to let go of this and go for the truth. No, that's prescriptive. If the desire overwhelms the person to go for the truth, then they'll automatically move in that direction. If they do it because they should, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that it's a waste of time, right? But again, as we've talked about in the past, there's shit that's getting in the way that for whatever reason either we don't want to face or we can't identify or both, right? And perhaps we haven't reached that level of desire to look deeper or to get into that immersive phase that you're talking about that would allow us to at least get a window into that and try to understand it.
Well, I'm not talking about a phase. I'm not talking about getting to some stage or some level. I'm saying that everyone is obsessed with something. And the only thing that they will get in their life consistently is the thing that they're obsessed with. Everyone gets
your obsession is truth.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That isn't a good thing. That's not good and positive.
But it's your life.
I didn't choose that, right? That it was a chosenness. I never chose that. I never sat down with the guidance counselor and said, what would be good and fit my personality type? What a bunch of crap. That's an insult to a human organism. No one chooses anything. We are chosen.
And for those people, Kapil, who aspire to be chosen, at some point, are they just going to feel it? Do they choose themselves? Do we make a decision to kill off the past and move in a different direction?
If the aspiration is that strong, then they will not wait to be chosen. If the aspiration is that strong, they've already been chosen.
Yeah, I guess that's what separates.
It's all about self-honesty, and the reason, and it's not human beings' fault they're not self-honest. It's not. It's that society has condemned them, which prevents them from being self-honest. Because if a person says, I don't know, I don't think before I act. Fine. Okay. Society, and they've internalized society, which is the mind. The mind is an internalized society. That's what the mind is. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. The mind come down upon them and say, well, you should always think before you act. That's totally wrong. How can you not think before you? Do you know how much pain you have caused by not thinking before you act? But here's 5 steps. From now on, make sure that you do it. And then when you don't do it, says, and see, I gave you a way to do it, and you didn't even follow through. You're just bad, right? So when that is the environment, when that is the microenvironment, and it's all based upon good or bad, then the human being is imprisoned forever. Mm-hmm. He is imprisoned by the guillotine of badness. He is on the hook to become good. And therefore, he will follow any prescription or any rule which gives him the self-image, even in his own eyes, of being a good person. And that is why he will not be self-honest, including you. I guarantee you, if I put a GoPro, if I put a video camera on you, and I watch you, you're going to be doing a whole bunch of nonsense. And the first thing you're going to say right now is, I know, you're right, I will. Even that's nonsense. If you really knew that it was nonsense, you wouldn't be doing it. So you don't know. That's just lip service. You don't know. That's the beginning of self-honesty. Not by me saying it to you, but by you giving yourself the freedom to be able to acknowledge that inside yourself without the slightest bit of self-condemnation. That is the beginning of the Holy Grail. And that exists nowhere in society. Not in the meditation hall, not in the retreat, not with the mindfulness instructor, not with the motivational speaker, not even with the priest. That exists nowhere.
So do you think all of us deal with this self-image that's a lie then? Is that identity a lie? Is that just bullshit?
It doesn't matter what it is. Your first question was more honest, because as soon as you ask if it's no good, well, that's just back to prescription. What if I say, yeah, it's no good? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do?
All right. Well, pretend I didn't say that.
Or you're going to say, oh, since I said it was no good, you're going to dissolve your self-image in 5 minutes?
No, I didn't say that. Pretend I didn't say it.
Okay, so your first question was valid. Are we all just lying to ourselves through self-image? The answer to that is yes. Now, all that remains is, where'd that question come from? Was that a question for listeners? Was that a question that was intellectual? Or did it tear your heart out?
It was a question.
Don't answer that question. But you can't answer it right now. You're going to be put on the spot. I'm not putting you on the spot. All conversations are between you and you. It isn't about condemnation. It isn't about judgment. It isn't about me standing here and saying this because you're going to assume that I want you to say X and you're going to say X because that's what you've been raised by the culture to do. If you don't do it, you're bad. And here's 5 steps to get out of it. If you don't do the 5 steps, now you're really bad. Well, guess what? There is no badness, first of all. Second of all, the 5 steps don't work. So you're screwed all the way around.
Yeah, so it's that validation, the validation of right or wrong, that we're just stuck in that damn thinking.
Well, just the belief that there is actually a right action or a right thought or a right thing to do that simply doesn't exist. The fundament of truth is so revolutionary that it so completely tears the most foundational elements of all that a human has taught. He no longer knows which way is up. He'll be afraid to even say his own name in fear that even that may be a lie. The human has drifted so deep into lies and untruths that he shouldn't say a word. Everything is a lie. No one realizes the degree to which society has completely imprisoned and destroyed the fabric of the human organism.
So, Kapil, are you at a point where you just totally ignore your mind?
No, that's a beautiful question. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to go into the "are you at a point" stuff because then that gets into contests, right? Let me just say this. In fact, I was going to write a Siddha scroll about that. The mind is not you, and you didn't really hear me, and you're not going to, and it doesn't matter. At least it went through acoustically.
Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? The mind is not me. I mean, we hear the egos and you're not your thoughts and so forth, and I know that's not you.
Well, everything that you think that you know, you don't. The beliefs and opinions that you have are so laughably wrong that if a God came out of the sky and you'd believe him because he was God, and he showed you, look, this is the real truth, you would be dumbfounded of just how ridiculously wrong and off top, so far from the truth you are.
All right, so let me kind of ask you 2 quick questions to end where we started. And this is kind of a philosophical question I've been kind of toying around in my head. Do you feel that the shit that's going on in the world with this coronavirus, is this the wake-up call the collective needed to say that you've been so fucked up for a long time, it's time for you to shake out of this shit, and maybe a few people will ultimately do? Do you think we've been waiting for this?
There's going to be Armageddon 1,000 times over. This is not the beginning. This has been going on in various forms forever, right? So once this thing has passed, then basically almost everyone will go back to the normal way of living.
But if you might get to that level of seriousness that you're talking about.
Yeah, but they might even with no coronavirus. There's always some people out there who are all on the cusp, and a brisk wind blows and it puts them over the edge. But the answer to your question, sure, it might, things that are extreme, like I said, things that are extreme, usually, at least have the potential to have some effect on someone. Yes.
And how does this help us come to grips with pain?
That's some self-aid, new age. What do you mean? Okay, what is that? What do you mean, come to grips with pain? What do you want?
Learn how to deal with it. Not run away from it.
I mean, to deal with shouldn't be, those are like, deal with is a fighting word. I mean, it's like taking a Palestinian flag to the Israelis. Come on, deal with? Right, what do you mean deal with?
How to understand it or
always about everything against dealing with. If you have cancer, you want to deal with it? You want to deal with cancer?
No, I want to kick its ass.
You want, how do someone feel better if they're in pain? I don't care.
Agreed.
Okay? Yeah. So if you hit them in the arm's gonna hurt, and then you alleviate the arm with some balm, tomorrow you're gonna hit the leg, then the leg's gonna hurt, and the next day the head's gonna hurt. Come on. It's fine. Go to the motivational speaker and the mindfulness expert and the meditate your life away. Go ahead and go to the retreat, and you'll have some massage therapist with a ponytail take care of you. Okay? Don't bring that stuff over here. I don't care.
I know you don't. How about the understanding of it? That's just part of life? Do we understand that? Is that the suffering component?
The understanding of pain?
Of suffering. That's just, for us, that's part of life. That's part of, that's part of our journey to the truth.
Well, tone speaks everything, right, Mo? So that was an apologeticness for, well, that was part of life. That's just okay. And I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say that you were right or wrong with that. I'm going to say if someone says suffering is a part of life, and that's just what it is. Okay. If someone says suffering is a part of life, and I want to know really how to get I want to understand it. It's a totally different story, and I know that you're going to latch on to the latter one because it's proper. But it's life absolutely is suffering, but it isn't just because the events of life are suffering. Life is suffering because of the illusions that we fall into as human beings. The illusion of mind, the illusion that we are ourselves, the illusion of attachment. All of these things completely being attached to a notion of a self, that is suffering. And if a person did not have that, then he could have all the bad events happen to him and he wouldn't be affected by them. So it isn't the events that are suffering. The events are indeed suffering, but that is not the fundament of the suffering.
Hey man, I love so much just having these conversations and hearing your perspective, and whether you like it or not, it impacts 5, 6, 10 of us. So I always appreciate it.